Hello, good evening. How are you?
Evelyn.
Great, great, great. Could you hear me loud and clear?
Oh, yes.
Great, great, great. So last time we had a good look at Gantt chart, right? How to create Gantt chart, milestone, how do we depict the progress overall, right? Now here, the most important part is basically how do you decide how much time each and every task will take, right? Well, anybody have any difficulties in Gantt chart? I've seen quite a great example. And if you haven't done yourself, please do try because this exercise will basically enlighten you for the next few learnings, right? And that's why I humbly request you to please create a Gantt chart for whatever you are taken as a project, taken as a next planning stuff like making tea, simplest one, making coffee, planning for a vacation or whatnot. Okay, so please do try.
Sir, I wanted to share mine. If you like, I
Yeah.
can email you or put it on the WhatsApp too.
Yes, madam. I think I have replied it, right? Or do you
No,
want
I
to?
have. I haven't shared.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. You can share it on a group, or do you want to showcase right now?
It doesn't matter, sir.
No. Would you like to show it right now?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. I
sure.
have it open
Please
if
be
you
made
like.
to co-host. I have make you co-host, ma'am. Now you can present your this thing. Wow. You're using Microsoft Project?
No, sir. I did it in Excel.
Wow. That's a lot of work. Wow. But yes, we can
Uh,
clearly see. Wow, this is really great. Great planning. I can clearly understand. Prepare the guest list, research activity for kids. Wow, wow. There's a complete one block for research. Then invitations. Wow, this is really good. So these are even you plan for group tasks as well. So group tasks are basically a kind of one level above task in our WBS, right? So this is really great, and we're going to learn these things in a few slide. Wow, this is really great. This is the next level. This is what the Microsoft project looks like, frankly speaking. So all those diamond shapes are basically the milestone. All those blue pipes are basically the progression of a task. Okay, and you also can color these progression. Like if you want to say, if you are on let's say 1st May 23 to as of today, then you might progress whatever task you have completed. So you can color it with green. So green means or whatever color you choose are basically completed task or that much have been progressed or something like that as well. This is really great. Can everybody see these? Madam, please do share in the group so that they can also use this template by changing name. This
okay.
is really great template. This is how
Will
the
do, sir.
overall Microsoft project is evolved. This is how the Jira is evolving. This is really great. Great work, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for bringing this up.
Sure.
Everybody, quite a few persons have tried it in Excel. That's really great. Means I have seen the tea bags example. Means you're thinking, and that's what all we need. That's how we keep what you can say, initialize our brain in terms of building this chart. Now as we just discussing, how do you take the estimation of the activity? There are some scientific methodologies, and that's what we're going to learn today, right? Anybody have any questions as of what we did till today? Yes, about the recordings, there are few recordings missing, I believe. Means even I got that thing on yesterday evening, and so let me work with the Zoom and come back to you on those missing recording link. Okay, give me a couple of days for that. I might need to write to the Zoom, and then they might come back to us within a day or two, and then I'll share these details with you. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your patience. And these things do happens due to software and all, but I try to release the recording as soon as our session is done, right? So please bear with me, and you can see in the history of group, like whatever the recordings are done, I normally post it then and there. So please have a look at our history so that you can understand if there are any missing recording, what are those, and then we can basically try to find those exact recording. Okay, now let's start with estimate activity duration. In this process group, the inputs are the schedule management plan, whatever you schedule in terms of whatever the timelines you given to a task, start and end, right? And that time, yeah, go ahead, ma'am. Hello, anybody have any question for me? No, no problem. That's good. So in the inputs of estimate activity duration, as the name suggests, we are estimating the activity duration, how much an activity might take, in terms of completing that activity, work item, or task, right? So here we are understanding the estimation of those tasks, work item or activities. The inputs are in terms of schedule management plan and a scope baseline. Schedule management plan, try to share us how are we building the schedule in terms of the project manager first starts building schedule, then he or she tables the plan, and every team chips in terms of, okay, let me do this task, let me do that task, and this might take 4 hours for me, this might take 6 hours for me, and so on and so forth. So that's a kind of first level of you might say gut feeling. Okay, so there we try to understand how much this task will take from each and every buy-in, each and every team's commitment to do that task, and we might check with him or her, what do you think in terms of how many hours, how many minutes this task might take for you. And then we have some sort of a scope baseline. Scope baseline is a kind of average duration for a task in a previous similar instances, which we might gather from the knowledge base also. And these are what we can say the generic efficiency we are talking about across industries, across the similar domain or similar type of work. Now here, what we are trying to do, we are trying to make sure at least we match those efficiencies, and we might build a project, product, solution, support services with a better efficiency than what we've understood earlier. So first is basically schedule management plan, where we try to get this estimation from the the resource who's basically going to do that tasks. Okay, and similarly we normally utilize those efficiencies which we have learned from previous similar projects. If there are no similar projects, then we might start from scratch. We might basically discuss in terms of those resources. Why do you say 4 hours, why not 3 hours or something like that. And then we have few tools to basically validate these number of hours, or what you can say estimating. If you look at tools and techniques, there are 4 estimation technologies, 4 estimation tools mentioned here: analogous estimation, parametric estimating, 3-point estimating, and bottom-up estimating. And then on top of this, we're going to learn 2 modern estimating methodology. One is called line of code, the other is called function point estimation. So we have around 6 estimation tools and techniques to do this estimation with. These are a scientific way of basically coming down to a estimation for a given task, activity, or work item. The project document which take as an inputs are the activity attributes and the activity list. The activity attributes means whatever we have studied, whatever we have inferred till date. So the activity name and different attributes, like this task should start from this date, should have a predecessor like this, like without that completion this task won't make any sense, and so on and so forth. So you have few attributes already attributed to a activity, work item, or a tasks list. Then we have assumption log. If you build any assumption for the similar task, like for this we might need a Java resource, we might need a .NET resource, we might need SQL programming here and something like that, you might put it in an assumption. Or this raw material should be arrived at my location few hours before actually whenever I need it. Those kind of assumptions also. So I'll put it in a assumption log, and I might refer to that, so that I'll make sure this assumption basically get addressed before I start that activity, task, work item. Then we have lessons learned research. This is what we call about the scope baseline understanding in terms of similar tasks we have already done before, and I might understand how much time this task might need, what are the differences, what are the similarities, and so on and so forth. If it's altogether new task, then I am going to discuss with the resource who is going to get this task done, and then I might apply one of these estimating methodologies from tools and techniques as well. And then I might build a milestone list, which is a kind of addition to my activity list, or basically here I am started building my Gantt chart, where I have activity name, task name, work item name, as we've seen in our hands-on expertise. After that, I might put some calendar where I have a start of the task, I have a basically end of the task, and the milestone applied accordingly. And basically the project team assignment. Now whoever buys this task, whoever get these tasks done by him or her, I normally mention their name also. So this is like we have the tasks, the duration, as well as the name. So that's completes our Gantt chart, and that completes our costing scenario as well, because task, schedule, and resources gives me exact cost. Or same thing, activity, schedule, and resources give me the exact cost, which will be applied for the task level basis. Then I have resource breakdown structure. I might categorize my resource as a developer, team lead, tester, verification, validations, release engineer, and so on and so forth. Even in let's say car factories, or any other projects as well, I normally build a kind of resource breakdown structure where I create a hierarchy, I create a different job roles for the resource who started working with me. And then I might have resource calendar. These are specifically talk about if that resource, specifically human resource, have some challenges in terms of their approved leave, so that he or she might not be coming to office on that day. He might have some sick leaves, he might have certain another challenges due to which he couldn't complete the task, he might have taken half day or something like that. So all these things has to be taken into inputs to plan my Gantt chart, to plan my actual task on a given day, and to be completed on the said day. So these are like we are planning it thoroughly, we are planning it from ground up to the nth level, and we are trying to understand in terms of gradual steps how this task will be planned, who will going to do it, according to how much time this will take, and then I might apply a kind of scientific estimation methodology to make sure the task estimation given there is according to the standards, or according to the best practices followed by the similar task, similar projects. Then I have a resource requirement in case if I do require any additional resource. And these are specifically whenever there are one or two resources going on holiday, they have a planned approved leave, or they might not come to the office for the next few days, something like that, due to health challenges and all. I might require extra resources. So how I can process this thing proactively? As a resource manager is external to my team, right? So I need to put the request proactively. So I might plan these extra resources, might be for few hours, few days, few sprints, depending upon the requirement. I might have to process this request at least 2 weeks ahead of time. And that's what we are talking about in terms of planning the resource management ahead, or proactively planning the resource requirement, or putting the said resource requirement proactively to the resource management team. And then we have risk register, wherever I include any and all risk which I foresee, with the risk weightage, risk probability, and risk mitigation cost, and a risk resource. We're going to learn risk register in depth, and we are going to basically do a hands-on experience on risk register as well, where we might have a name of the risk, description of the risk scores, risk impact score, where we might understand how much this risk can impact to our project, might be in the time, schedule, scope, or price based, and then assign a resource to that risk as well, so that whenever that risk get materialized, or whenever the probability of risk getting materialized intensifies above a threshold, we might have those risk mitigation strategy execution by the resource which we have assigned to it. And that's how we normally do the risk management proactively with every project. And we're going to learn all these steps in depth in a knowledge area called risk management knowledge area. And all these items in the project document are the inputs to estimate activity duration. Does anybody have any question as of now in terms of any inputs they couldn't understand? Are we good?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Thank
Yes, sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And then we have enterprise environmental factor, any factors which are affecting our project organizations from outside the company, outside the organization. That also consider in terms of if there are any delays due to that, if there are any, vendor supply might get delayed. Whenever we talk about materials, there are three type of materials we consider: human resources, raw material, and machinery. Please keep this in mind. So any of these things getting affected by enterprise environmental factor like snowstorm, like some accident on the road, so my raw material delivery gets delayed. All these things has to be considered in terms of my project, task or activity getting delayed. And this is what the practical approach talk about. And then on top of that, I have all my organizational policies and procedure, specifically the other departments, which are going to help me out to get this project executed in time on budget. Like the standardization, the templatization, the lending from other team in terms of some raw material as well. These are all included in the organizational process assets. So all the organizational support structure for which is given to me, given to a project manager to complete his or her task on time, on budget. And that's how I normally work as a project manager effectively, efficiently throughout the project's life cycle. Let's move to tools and techniques of estimate activity duration. So we are trying to do estimation of the task whatever we plan on the Gantt chart, the length of the bar we are talking about, right? And basically we're going to target that length, how we are progressing day by day, week by week, sprint by sprint, and all such scenario. Of course, we might have some SME within our organization to review our Gantt chart, so that they might suggest you few tweaks and turns whenever there are some tasks which are supposed to take some bigger time than just whatever we have mentioned. And these are the normal scenario. And this might be due to some extra circumstances which might we might not have seen. But as far as historical similar task execution, our senior managers might have experienced those. So we might tweak and turn the task estimation through a kind of subject matter expert review. And that's why they have mentioned expert judgment here. Now there are 4 estimation technologies mentioned here, which we're going to learn in the next slide. First is analog estimation. Second is parametric estimating, 3-point estimating, bottom-up estimating, and then 2 which are used as a modern estimation methodologies like line of code or kilo line of code, and function point estimation. So these are the 6 estimation technology which we're going to learn. And then we do data analysis in terms of alternative analysis. Is this path okay, or should we go by this path in case of there are some alternative path available to getting the same task or activity to completion. And then we have some reserve analysis. We're going to learn about this reserve analysis in depth during project cost knowledge management area. These reserves specifically talk about the financial reserve. In case if the risk materialize, which type of revenues I can use for to mitigate that risk, I might have kept in the reserve. And this is how we normally address our 11th hour challenges with this reserve analysis. It might be a schedule reserve, it might be a cost reserve, it might be a resource reserve. So there are these three reserves mostly used by the project managers whenever there are some challenges getting materialized. And you might guide these via a meeting with PMOs. PMOs are project management office, where we normally put our case, hey project managers, I think my project is going through these new challenges which might come my way in the next sprint, next 2 days or something like that. So could you please lend me some sort of a raw material, some sort of a resource, some sort of a system, because these things happen, which is a really challenging scenario, and could we please help each other? And that's how we normally might get those resources as lent to us in terms of getting our project on track, on budget. And this is one of the what you can say part and parcel of reserve analysis. And then we have decision making. So which alternative is better? Should we delay the project? We might discuss it with our client, our product owner, saying, hey product owner, this is the challenge, and you can also feel the heat. Could we delay the project manager? That product owner might say, no, it's really dangerous for my business. So what we'll do, we'll have some extra resources build on that project, which might help us to get the project on track, get it executed on time. But yes, there are some additional costs which are basically borne by the product owner, or might be with the collaboration of both the organizations. Again, depending upon the decision making, depending upon the discussions and meeting, we might decide which is the best alternative path in case of some challenges. And that's what the kind of understanding we need to do. We need to escalate these matters to the PMO, and PO might take with the engagement managers or the product owners of the client, and then we might get extra budget released for those additional work, raw material, or the resource requirement. In terms of output, the duration estimate is the output. So duration estimate of each task, each activity, each work item. In terms of basis of estimate, what was the basis of estimate? Which tools and technique have we used? And we need to make sure we use single tools and techniques to estimate. You can't play around with multiple estimation technique. It's dangerous for the resource to estimate. It's dangerous for the project, because if anybody use whatever they like, it's really not beneficial for the project. And we'll learn that whenever we learn through these 6 estimation methodologies. So that's why we need to have a uniform basis of estimate. You might choose function point, you might choose line of code, you might choose bottoms up, and any of these 6 estimation methodologies. The product document updates are, of course, the activity attributes in terms of estimation of that activity, work item, or task. Assumption log, any additional assumptions you have took. And in terms of lessons learned research, we'll release our knowledge. If we are doing those tasks for the first time, the knowledge base might get increased of how much time these tasks might take, in terms of what type of estimation methodology suits the best, or whatever we learn during these estimation planning. And this is all we need to understand in terms of estimate activity duration. Could you understand how well planned, how scientific approach we have instituted in a simple process of estimating an activity duration? And any questions so far? Have you understood what we are discussing here? We are good, right? Let me move on. Now let's try to understand how we do it practically. That's the best practices thumb rule given by PMI PMbook. Now let's try to understand how do you estimate activity duration. Estimate activity duration is the process of estimating number of work period. So work period can be seconds, minutes, hours, days needed to complete the individual activities with the estimated resource. So here we are attaching the resource man, material, machine. Man is the human resource, materials is the raw material, and machines in the sense the tools. Like if you're in a car manufacturing plant, the robot might be a tool. The raw material might be the iron or the frame of aluminum iron composite or something like that. In terms of human resource, who is the operator of that robot, who is basically assembling that car, building that car. So all these three, we need to estimate the activity duration. The key benefit processes is that it provides amount of time each activity will take. Activity in the sense task or work item. Each activity will take to complete. This process performed throughout the project uniformly. The estimate activity duration processes required an estimation of amount of work effort required to complete the activity and the amount of available resource estimated to complete the activity. So here we are talking about the estimation about the raw material, machines as well as human resource. So it's not just the time. This is talks about the raw material delivery. This talks about the efficiency of the machines which we are using to complete the task as well. These estimate used to approximate the number of work periods or the activity durations needed to complete the activity, task, work item using the appropriate project and resource calendars. Now here we are applying the timelines to these resources. In many cases, the number of resources are expected to be available to accomplish an activity along the skill proficiency of those resources may determine the activity duration. Let's try to understand this statement in detail. In many cases, the number of resources that are expected to be available to accomplish an activity, a project planning task to be planned by the project manager. Now, every project manager's thought process might be not at the at the peak, or might be not at the most efficient level. So some project manager might take 2 hours to prepare the Gantt chart. Some project manager might take 4 hours. Again, this is the detailing he or she might include. This might be due to the learning curve he or she might have to apply these Gantt charts, to build this Gantt chart for a given project. Along with the skill proficiency, skill in the sense we are talking about what type of skill level is the person for a given task. Then the proficiency he or she might have to complete that task of those resources may determine the activity duration. Now similar things applies to the developers, creators, or the robot operators of a given car manufacturing company. Now here we need to understand each resource have their own way of working, own way of creating, enhancing, or completing that task. So we need to understand how skilled or proficient they are and then plan this estimated activity duration. Now, how do I do it? Let's take a practical approach here. Oh, come on. Yes. Now let's go ahead with these 6 estimation, estimate task, activity, or work duration processes. In analogous estimation, analogous estimating is a technique of estimating the duration or the cost of an activity or a project using historical data from the similar activity or a project. So here we are talking about retrieving the knowledge, from the knowledge archival system. If you have done similar project earlier, most of the projects, around 80% plus projects are normally the repetition of the projects whatever we have done earlier. So we might leverage those resources to understand which type of estimating methodology we have chosen. Are they good, means whatever the historical figures, are they with the are they in line with the practical figure? If historical figure says 4 hours and if I complete in 3.5 hours, that's okay. But if it says 4 hours and last to last project it might have taken 3 hours, then we need to really concern it about the efficiency being decreased. So that might not be the correct one. So we might need to go with another estimation methodology. But if you have really great historical figures, you might use analogous estimating. So analogous estimating use parameter from previous similar project such as duration, budget, size, weight, complexity, etc. as the basis of estimating the same parameter or measure for the future project. So analogous talks about historical data to be extrapolated for the current project. In terms of parametric estimation, Parametric estimating is an estimating technique in which an algorithm is used to calculate cost or a duration based on historical data and project parameters. Now here we are using some mathematical formula like during COVID, if it took 6 hours and if you reduce it by let's say 30% efficiency, how much will you take right now? These kind of mathematical calculations to on a historical data gives you a parametric estimating. Again, these are basically we try to apply the difference in situation, difference in efficiency of a machine's resource or the raw material, and that's how we calculate these current estimation, and these are the basis of estimation which we might use to plan our Gantt chart. And parametric estimating uses a statistical relationship between a historical data and other variables. So it can be square footage in construction, where in last year we might have done square foot of construction in 3 hours. Now we have better cranes, better cement mixtures, and the cement also gets solidified much earlier because we are using some dehydrant, some chemicals and all those things. So we might have improved our efficiency by let's say 30%. So for this building, we might plan with the efficiency of 30% to construct that building. And similarly, we might use these kind of mathematical formula to use historical figure with the efficiency we might have in getting the job done and build our next level planning. To calculate on estimate or activity apparent parameters such as cost, budgets, durations. Predominantly, we most probably calculate our durations, and then the cost and budget get calculated implicitly. So please do remember, most of the time we do calculate durations only. How much time will it take to complete that activity? Are you with me? Could you understand? The analogous is completely historical, figures we carry forward from our history. In parametric estimation, we might apply some formula on a couple of historical data to be processed for my current execution. These are the projects which we keep doing repeatedly. So the historical figure gets you a clear, correct estimation thought process. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on analogous or parametric estimating? There are a good number of interviews where they've asked about these estimation methodologies, like which type of estimation methodologies have you followed? Or could you please tell me on parametric estimating? So we need to prepare on our answer specifically in terms of these estimation methodologies. Okay. Does anybody have any questions as of now?
No, sir.
Okay, sure. Thank you. This is a bit technical, but believe me, if you really work on the answer, it's simple things which you can answer in the interview. Okay. Now the 3-point estimation. This is a bit mathematical, but this is used in few organizations where we normally try to average out the estimation from 3 different parties. Let's try to understand this, and then we might do an estimation by ourselves. The accuracy of single point duration estimate may be improved by considering the estimation, uncertainty and risk. This 3-point estimation helps to define an approximate range for an activity duration. So here, rather than a fixed point, I might have a range. So rather than 3 hours, I might have 2.5 or 3.5. Again, how do we calculate this? So it's like most likely. This estimate based on the duration of the activity given the resources likely to be assigned to their productivity, realistic expectation of availability for the activity, dependency on their participants and interruptions. So here we are mostly considering the environmental factor, and what we check with 3 different individuals and then plot this graph. So which is the most likely in terms of if somebody says 3 hours, somebody says 2.5 and somebody says 3.5. So the most likely will be the 3 because it's average out, right? the optimistic, the activity duration based on the analysis of the base case scenario for the activity. And then there is a pessimistic, the duration based on analysis of the worst case scenario of the activity. So this will be the longest estimation, the most likely will be the middle one, and the optimistic will be the shortest one. So you average out these things. So depending upon the assumption distributions of the values within the range of three estimates, the expected duration, that is TE, can be calculated. One commonly used formula is a triangular distribution or averaging out distribution, as in the sum of these three and divided it by 3. So TM, TO and TP get added together. That's the sum of these three, and divide by 3 gives the estimation, expected time. The triangular distribution is used whenever there is insufficient historical data. Our first two estimation thought process are based on historical data. But like if you're doing something for the first time, how do you plan your project? So you plan your project with these 3-point estimating. So triangular distribution is used when there is an insufficient historical data, or when using judgmental data, durations, estimate based 3-point with an assumed distribution, provide an expected duration and clarify the range of uncertainty around the expected duration. So this is like for the T, I might ask 3 persons, what do you think, how much a tea of a 3-cup tea you going to, how much time do you think it'll require? Let's try it out between ourselves. Jagruti ma'am, could you please suggest if I would request you to make a cup of 3 cups of tea, how much time do you think you'll take?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Now let's come to Chandini ma'am. Chandini ma'am, how do you think, how much time will it take to make 3 cups of tea?
So approximately 3 cups of tea, around 15-20 minutes. 15 minutes.
Choose a number, ma'am. 15
Around
minutes.
15 minutes.
Okay, perfect, great. And if we check with, let's say, Sayed sir. Sayed sir, how much time you will take to, prepare 3 cups of tea, sir?
Around like 12 minutes.
Okay, great. See, here we are just, checking with 3 persons, and we got 3 different estimates. So Jagruti ma'am is on 10 minutes, Chandani ma'am is on 15 minutes, and Sayed sir is at 12 minutes. And so here we might choose which is the most likely. Can anybody guess?
12 minutes.
Says, most likely is Sayed sir, right?
12 minutes.
Yes, perfect, sir. Optimistic might be Jagruti ma'am. Are you with me, sir, madam? And the pessimistics means the longest one, or might be with a padded, or budgeted timeline, is with the Chandini ma'am. Now let's understand, there's nothing right or wrong here. We are trying to understand, if we are making tea for the first time, we need to understand from others, like if they made the tea, how much time they took, and then I built a 3-point estimation, like I average it out. So 15 plus 12 plus 10 divided by 3 will be by the actual 3-point estimation for this task, for this activity. Have you understood how this is done? So madam, anybody have any confusion? Simple enough, sir, right? Yeah. So let me move on. Now let's try to understand bottoms up estimation. Now, we've done these, WBS and all, right? And in WBS, we get that estimation at the last minute. Whenever say, collect the pot, collect the water at this level, I can, like we built the Gantt chart yesterday, right? There we have given some estimation. That estimation was a kind of bottom-up estimation. So what I do, I go to the last level of WBS and assign a gut feeling of me as a project manager. And this is the first, type of estimation we start with the planning, where the other might not be present. If they are present, I might check with them. Hey, what do you think? How much time will I take to, collect the pot, collect the water, and so on and so forth. Again, depending upon the meeting groups, we might go ahead by choosing bottom-up estimating. So bottom-up estimating is a method of estimating duration or cost by aggregating the estimate of the lower level components of WBS. So WBS is really important, and we are using WBS for the last many decades, and that's why we are good at WBS. We are good at disintegrating the task with a smaller number of hours. When an activity duration cannot be estimated with a reasonable degree of confidence, the work within the activity is decomposed into more detailed task activities and the detailed durations are estimated. Again, this has to do mostly with the gut feeling. So we might average out, or we might use the 3-point or 5-point estimation also. These estimates are then aggregated into total quantity for each of the activity duration, and then we mention the group activity duration. The activities may or may not have dependencies between them that can affect the application or the use of resource. If there are dependencies, this pattern of resource usage is reflected and documented in the estimated requirements of the activity. The best part of bottom-up estimating is we are also checking the dependencies and scenario as well. And that's how the sequencing becomes more efficient whenever you use bottom-up estimating. Okay, let me play you a small video called 4 types of estimation techniques, just to revise if we have missed any detail in understanding these 4 types of estimation. You got a clear idea of these 4 estimation methodologies? Anything which I can explain you better? So we had a look at these 4 estimation methodologies, and they are mentioned in the PMbook as well at 6.4.2.2, where we have analogous estimation, analogous estimating. Then we have 6.4.2.3 parametric estimating, then 6.4.2.4 3-point estimating, and then 6.4.2.5 bottom-up estimating. So please read through PMbook as well, okay? And I'll share this video with you to understand how these estimation methodologies are applied. Now there are new estimation methodologies which are quite modern, and these are basically got popular after 2000, 2001, and so on and so forth. So these are like source of lines of code, and these are specifically, well, the first is typically for software domain only, or the documentation domain, or the artistic domain. But overall, if you look at the other estimation, like for car manufacturers and all those things, you might have to consider number of outputs to be averaged out for this estimation. Let's try to understand what is source of lines of code, as also known as SLOC, LOC, or KLOC. KLOC, kilo lines of code, is the most common name for these type of estimation methodology. It's a software metric used to measure the size of computer program by counting the number of lines in the text of the program source code. So if you are building a solution, if you are developing a program, we normally go with the lines of program, and we'll try to understand for .NET, it's 182 lines per day. For Java, it's 171 lines per day. So this way, there's an industry standard. Your organizations might do a bit better than that because of the abstraction of the class and so on and so forth. Let's not go into details. There are some software manufacturing company, IT company, they use these source lines of code, and this is applicable to documentation also. So if you are working on a documentation, how many lines of code have you used, which type of documents we have. So we have categorization of documents as well. So how technical is the document, how complex is the document, that's also basically drives on the how many lines of code you do write in a given average day for a given task. SLOC is typically used to predict the amount of efforts that will be required to develop a program or required to develop a document, as well as to estimate the programming productivity or maintainability of the once the software is produced. So even maintaining the documentation, maintaining the software code, updating it frequently might lies into the source lines of code, SLOC or KLOC type of estimation methodologies. And then one of the most matured scientific methodology, as we normally call as a function point estimate, a unit of measurement to express the amount of business functionality in an informal system, product solution support services provides to the user. So how the user is getting benefited, how many functions, feature list he or she is going to consume. FP measures that solution size, software size. They are widely accepted as an industry standard for functional sizing. This is also used by HIPAA. So if you're using any healthcare solution, like you have inpatient time, you have a doctor inspections time, you have various blood work or pathological work sample times. These three things basically lets you to understand how much a patient takes a time till he or she gets started on the treatment. And that's can be also included in the function point, which is also approved by the HIPAA, the US medical authorities. For sizing up software-based function point, several recognized standard and or public specification have come into existence. Now let me explain you in a simplest possible terms. So how do you consider sizing? Let's say we are building an application, like we seen in use case diagram, right? We have a scope, we have a limitation of scope. Let's consider this as this block ILF and ILF with a green with the application being measured, application being considered, or application being estimated. Now from the user side, these are the three features or functionality which are being consumed by the users are taken into account. External inputs. How many external inputs are getting fed to the application? So let's say in case of a typical patient visiting a front desk, we might need to consider name, first name, last name, surname, address. Address might be divided into 5 different entities, including zip code, suit name, apartment name, address name, street name, and blah 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 thing. Then we have external output. So how many times do I need to acknowledge whatever data I have received? Let's say 2 times or 3 times. So that will be my EO. And then external inquiries. Just to make sure everything is right, I might have to review this thing, review that form, right? So that might take a minute or 2. So that my EQ. These are the 3 important things which are being interacted by a patient at its first step. Now in a second step, wherever we collect the medical history, again we are taking some data from a user, then we are doing some processing and we might get it validated from the user. Are you with me? Could you understand how the user interaction with system can create the number of estimation duration scenarios?
Yes, sir.
Have you understand EI, EO, and EQ? Again, these are not asked in the interview. Only at some point of time, there was one interview where they've asked, like, could you please showcase your function point knowledge, in terms of how do you estimate your activity? And if you can just tell them these, long forms, that's more than enough to understand. You can showcase this picture also. But we need to understand how do you estimate the duration. So there are these many points which we will use in terms of estimate for a given activity or a duration. Same thing with EIF. EIF is my external interface file. So if I'm getting some data from some other application, let's say some database, let's say some other application, like HR, data from some SAP in our attendance management system. In terms of our, car manufacturing, we might be receiving the machine, the engine, the seat covers, the seat frame and blah blah thing from some other department, right? So that will be my EIF. external interface file. Again, I have EQ in terms of external, EQ is my, external inquiries. So whatever the inquiries might be for confirmation, might be for the requirement, are mentioned as a EQ. EI is my external inputs and EO is my external outputs. So you have to remember these 4 or 5 detailed what you can say long forms, and if you can explain these things, it's more than enough to explain function point. Again, there are function point certified expert in North America and Canada. I was one of them. My license have been lapsed, but still I can renew that thing and I can be a function point expert. Even you can be a function point expert. And believe me, there are a great number of organizations, specifically in healthcare, IT, and educational domain. They use function point estimation to estimate their project duration. And that's how this is really evolved scientific process. And that's why we need to understand this just for the sake of interview clearance to start with. Otherwise, whenever you required the support, I'm there for you if you're using function point, or I'll teach you in depth how this function point is done with some experience also, with some examples also. But right now, let's try to understand. There are these 6 estimation methodology, which might one of them might be used for estimate activity duration. Does that make sense to you? Anybody have any question for me?
Yeah, excuse me, sir. I'm getting confused as to the difference between EQ as well as the difference between like EI and EO. Like, why is EQ at the same time going both ways?
Sure, sir. That's really great answer. Could you consider, let's say, you are with your friend visiting a medical hospital, right? And your friend might have some fever or a cough or something like that, right? So whenever you go at a reception, right? You first land to the reception or whatever you call at the entry point. There you might need to fill up a form. Even if you are frequent there, you might have to fill up that form, mentioning your number, mentioning your name, address, or something. Some of the few entities. Am I right? Could you understand this, sir?
Yeah, I get that.
Now, wherever external inputs are considered, all these users are giving the inputs to the system. So the nurse or the front desk operator might feed in those details into her computer system. They might ask you to fill a form, or they might you ask to just put your finger to their biometrics so that they can access your files. This is a normal scenario. So there's just one input, like you put your finger. That can be done in seconds. But in some scenario, you might require a 2 or 3 minute form filling if you're visiting a new hospital. So these are what we call external inputs. And there could be one input and there could be 20 inputs, depending upon the hospital rules and regulation. And that's how we can estimate the inpatient activity duration. Are you with me, sir, till this point?
Yes, I understand the inputs as well as the outputs. It's more of the EQ where that comes into play.
So external inquiry, when you fill up a form, sir, and that lady have enter into the system, she might ask you to sign afterwards, saying, okay, I have reviewed and the information is correct to my knowledge. That's the actual statement you normally have on that medical patient inform, as they normally call it. So that is where we review. So my name spelling is correct, my weight, height, what all you given to them are correct or not. That might take a minute or two, right, to go through 1 page, 2 page, depending upon the hospital and their rules and regulations. Are you with me, sir?
Okay.
So you can understand as those review whatever you are giving it to the system, reviewing those items. We are not update in case there is anything wrong, you might update it, but normally that's not the scenario. So normally the EQ will be just the review time. Sometimes or exceptional times you might have to update something because your name might be misspelled by the nurse or something like that.
I get it now. Okay, thank you so
So
much.
these type of durations are actually considered whenever you are trying to understand how much my inpatient process cost me in terms of minutes. And believe me, there are billions of dollars spent by each hospital to reduce, billions of dollars spent by the hospital industry within North America to get this process. Oh, something went wrong. Could you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there was some problems. I was, sometimes we might get disconnected. So here, what we are trying to understand, how to make that process efficient. Believe me, there are good number of hospitals which are normally equipped with something like fingerprint scanner for their registered patient or iris scanners for their registered patients, so that you don't have to spend minutes in all those users entering the hospital or the patients entering the hospital. If they are new, then of course they have to understand even big thing, the insurance, what we do, HMO, PPO in North America specifically, we need to understand, could we leverage from those insurance service provider and how to contact them, because in good number of states there are enactments like you have to inform the insurance service provider then and there whenever that patient walks into your hospital, because the cost has to be borne by the insurance provider. There are some co-pay and all those options. I believe you know these things, right? So could you understand how EI, EQ and EO does get measured?
Yeah, now I get it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And again, the example really, clears the doubt. So please try on example, even in terms of our tea making exercise, right? Can anybody tell me what are the external inputs? Just a thought. We are not going to make tea in our work culture, but still, what are the external inputs we take whenever we're making tea? Anyone?
Ingredients and the suggestions,
Okay.
like somebody
The
wants a
first-
ginger tea.
The first
That's
is
an
the
input.
Yeah, you might have a pot, but you need to get the water from the tap, right? So you need to start tap and all those things. So these are external inputs. You are getting it inputted for your screen to make a tea. Does that clear the confusions, or anybody still have any confusion? Believe me, this is really, really great way to learn estimation. And if you want to have, there are a good number of videos available on YouTube as well. If not, please do ask me. I was a certified trainer. I just left my lesson in 2014. I have not renewed it because in India, function point are not that common or used by the only top few companies. So that's why in North America and Canada, this is a really great certification you can have, and you can have it at around, I think, $20-25, cost as well. But yes, you might need to study. You might need to understand the complexity of these, FTR, ILF, and ELF, and all those things also. Okay, so let me move on. For us, function point estimation, if you can just explain EI, EQ, EO, that's more than enough. And I think interview we might understand, yet function point. You don't have to say I'm an expert in function point, but you might say, yeah, I know function point. We normally calculate the estimate activity duration by external input, external output, and external inquiry. And there are some other, data points we consider for the data exchange, and we normally total the number of time it takes to collect those data elements, and so on. So that's more than enough for a normal interview. And there are very, not many interviews where they've asked function point, but this is just to give you how the modern estimation thought process is evolved. Okay, let me move forward. If you have any question, please feel free to ask anytime. Don't wait for me to ask you. Please ask question. Okay. Now, the next process groups is a develop schedule. Here we are developing Gantt chart. So when it comes to develop schedule, this includes the scope, schedule, and resource. So it divides the cost. Scope, schedule, resource gives you a cost, and that's how we normally develop the Gantt chart. So develop schedule, inputs, the schedule management plan, and a scope baseline, like the last process group we have studied in estimate activity duration. So same thing here in terms of inputs and few more to make sure we have a complete Gantt chart in front of you. Now, what are the things we haven't added Gantt chart as of yesterday? Let's go through them as well. So project documents, which we take it as an inputs, are activity attributes, activity list. Activity attributes in the sense, as I told you, the start of the activity, the duration of the activity, the dependencies of the activity, and all these things are the activity attributes. Then we have a list of activity, the name of the activity, and a description of activity. So it can be installed biometric on the doors of State Farm office, or collect the engine, tires, and seat covers to complete the car manufacturing, or to build the complete the car completion or ready for test kind of scenarios. Then we have assumption logs. Every time we do assume everything will flow as smooth as butter, but there are some challenges, and we might consider those challenges mentioning in the risk register. So every assumption, normally there's a respective risk. It can be smaller or a bigger depending upon the impact of the cost or a schedule to your Gantt chart. Now I am becoming more technical in explaining this scenario because I believe you can understand these. Then we consider basis of estimate. Here we mention whatever estimation basis we've chosen, and believe me, there's a thumb rule, there's a normal policy to follow a single estimation thought process. If you have historical, then the first two, or the last four, whatever it suits to you, your line of work, the organization's decision in terms of basis of estimate. These are given to the project manager whenever a project manager starts a project, and project manager have an authority to change it, but normally whatever is given to him or her is basically whatever we should apply. But again, you should know how to change it. That's why basis of estimate is not that big deal whenever it comes to the practical life. But whenever you're using something like function point estimation, yes, we might need to spend some effort in understanding how do we calculate function point estimation at the ground, and I'll help you out. Don't worry about that. I'm with you for the next 6-7 months, right? So the earlier you got a job, the earlier you start working, the better, because then these things we can learn on job. There are around 30% management which we need to learn on job, because every organizations have their ways and means to address their management, to qualify or what they understand is the best way of managing a project. And believe me, we need to adapt to those as well. Okay, let me move forward. Then we have so we got a duration of estimate, and then we have lessons learned register, where we'll try to understand how we have executed, if we have executed any similar project in past, how we could make it more efficient. Then we might apply milestone lists to every task, so that we know whenever these tasks are getting completed, whenever the tasks getting delivered to the customer, consumer. Then project schedule network diagram. This is what we talk about, the Gantt chart. So here we have a complete detailing of all the tasks we are executing in parallel, with the difference of with the different resource name, so that they are working in parallel. They are not overworked or underworked. So we tune this project schedule in terms of network diagrams, which has to be done first, which has to be done later, which is the critical task. And this is how the project team assignments also came at play whenever you develop your schedule, whenever you develop your Gantt chart. So that I know Ravindra have 6-hour plan, 6-hour task plan for today, tomorrow, and so on and so forth. Normally, as a thumb rule, PMI PMP suggests 6 hours as a task planning each day. And then rest of the 2 hours are basically for the meetings, for documentation, and all the other things. But some of the organizations, even in North America and Canada, might plan for 6.5 or 7 hours a day. Again, depending upon their thought processes they have adopted, they might change these best practices and apply it to the practical executions. Then we have resource calendar. So every holiday, every resource request in terms of holiday, sick leaves, and all those things has to be considered for my Gantt chart, for my task planning, and the resource requirement. And okay, now let me explain you simple fundamental called bench resource. Have anybody heard of this term called bench resource? No? Okay, no problem.
Is it the resource that you can use in times of need? It's not assigned to your project, but it's there if you need.
Yeah, it's not the complete way, but yeah, that you are very right. So bench are the resources who are not allocated to a project, and they are with the resource manager, or they are the resources which are normally prepared for some training or pulled out of a project for some training. Might be new technology, new tools, or anything. Okay, but whenever a project needs, these resources can get attached to a project for a few hours, for a few days. And normally for a few days means 2 or 3 days at the max or something like that. And every organizations have certain limitation in terms of how many bench resources you can consume. It normally depends on how big or how critical your project is. So if you're doing a project for a new client, and there's lots at stake in terms of one big project coming from them or something like that, you might get bench resources within couple of hours. Or if your project is not so critical and it's being basically getting executed in a good controlled manner, you might not get a bench resource. Or you might get a freshers. What are freshers? These are least experienced resources in your organizations, which are not well prepared in terms of doing the normal work or coming to a normal resource efficiency. So these resources are given to your project at a partial cost or a negligible cost or at a zero cost. But these resources keep asking questions, they keep learning these things, so they might eat your senior times as well. So that might derail your efficiencies. Now all these mix and balance of these resource requirement have to be considered whenever we are doing new resource requirement or we are putting requests for new resources to a resource manager. Resource manager might give you two bench resources when you need one senior resource, and this is normally happens practically. He says, oh, we have two resources, right? So take two rather than one. But actually, whenever you require one resource and which is a senior enough with the skills and proficiency, you might not get whatever you want. And this is a real practical scenario in every project. So that's why they've mentioned resource requirement as a continuous input to develop schedule. So here we are constantly analyzing what type of resource do we need, what levels of skill and proficiency are we needing, and so on and so forth. So this way, the resource requirement is a kind of constant input to your Gantt chart or your developed schedule. Think it like for making a tea, I might have an helping hand, or for making a dinner, I might have an helping hand, and so on and so forth. So this resource requirement, think about the helping hand, which might make your project efficient, get executed effectively, efficiently, with the least possible cost as well. So even the cost at play whenever you try to develop schedule for a given project, for a given work assignment. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions in terms of inputs in developed schedule? These are the inputs to your Gantt chart. Are you with me, sir, madam?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Then we have agreement. So if there are any agreement like penalty clauses. So what are the penalty clauses? If you don't deliver car before Christmas, I might deduct $5,000 from the payment. And these are the agreement. Means we might agree to the client to start with, because we know we are going to deliver it before Christmas. But then the corona came, then the snowstorm came, then the engine delivery got delayed from my Chinese partner or something like that. So this way, there are some agreements which are normally in place in today's modern world to understand if there are any delay to the release or delivery to the said product feature, we might penalize you in terms of financially penalizing or punitive clauses, as they call legally. So that's why we need to understand if there are such agreement in whenever you're managing a project. If there are, then we need to make sure we don't normally penalize for any delayed delivery. And that's what we need to consider as an input to develop schedule as well. And then, of course, the enterprise environmental factor and organizational process. I will not explain again because we have just explained it a few minutes back. Now, let's understand the tools and technique. The schedule network analysis. This is actually Gantt chart preparation we are talking about. And we have done it, a hands-on workshop on that, right? We have learned it, how to make a T or a couple of other Gantt chart. And that's what they mean by schedule network analysis. Then we have a critical path method. This we have learned in precedent diagramming method, which is our critical path, where I can't afford to get delayed that task, activity or work item. So that's my critical path method. Then resource optimization, as we just discussed about the bench resource or the skilled proficient resource and the balance in between. And that's what this resource optimization is all about. And then the data analysis. What if scenario in terms of specifically raw material? If the raw material is not up to the quality, what will be the output? Garbage in, garbage out? Or could we manage that output? Or could we ask for a new raw material? How much that will delay? So these kind of what if scenario, this goes hand in hand with our assumption and the risk management processes. And then the simulation. For some critical project, we might do something called proof of concept. What is the proof of concept? Whatever we are conceptualizing, let's develop a small part of it. Like if you are developing a robot, we might develop a small robot or small functionality to understand how the motor function, how the hands of the robots picks up certain item. Could we do that? And then we extrapolate it. So this is what called simulation or a proof of concept. Then of course the PDMs also, the precedent diagramming method also gives us the leads and lag. So we can address the resource holidays with leads or lags effectively to manage our project effective, with the most efficient progress. And then schedule compression. Sometimes we might need to compress our schedule or basically try to deliver something within time, within some dates. And for that, we might need some extra resources so that we can compress our schedule. This is called crushing. And we're going to learn it whenever we do hands-on experience on Microsoft project. So schedule crashing is one of the technique to make sure you deliver the project early and so on and so forth. The project management system, the reporting to the top management goes via your project planning software, where we will understand how our PMIS is retrieving data automatically from our project plan, because this is how it's getting reported to the top management, and that's why it concerns to the project manager. We might need to take a review in terms of what is going to the top management on a given day as a status, which is normally getting done automatically. So you might need to review a couple of parameters on your project management plan so that the top manager gets the actual correct picture of the project on the ground. And then we have agile release planning. This has to do with applying the sprint duration, sprint meetings added to the Gantt chart. So you are compliancing your Gantt chart with the agile release planning. We're going to do it in a hands-on experience as well. So let's try to understand. We have to understand the sprint planning, the iterative planning in terms of number of resources working per iteration, per sprint, and we need to showcase those things accordingly in our Gantt chart. And these are the tools and techniques, 8 tools and techniques for developing a schedule, building your Gantt chart. The output are, of course, the schedule baseline or the Gantt chart overall. Schedule baseline talks about how many tasks we are completing on a given day or in a given sprint and so on and so forth. The project schedule, this talks about the actual Gantt chart. The schedule data, this talks about what are the data entities you have included in the Gantt chart, like the name of the activity, the duration of the activity, the start of the activity, the milestone of the world, the resource attached to the activity, and so on and so forth. This you can consider as an activity attributes as well. Then we have a project calendar. Like resource calendar, we have an organizational calendars called project calendars. This talks about the holidays, which are organizational holidays in terms of what are holidays. Like Christmas is a holiday in North America. There are standard 8 holidays policy in a year. And that's basically included in these project calendars as well, so that we don't plan working on holidays. And then change request. Any change request coming our way, that has to be added in the next sprint or according to the projects, according to the projects next level planning or getting flexibility adjusted for the next sprint. Normally a sprint which we have developed as a plan, normally the current sprint is kept constant so that the overall planning might not get disturbed. So whatever change request on the highest priority, we normally put it to the next sprint, and so on and so forth. We'll study this thing whenever we do the hands-on plan, project management plan on a Microsoft project. Then project management plan updates are schedule management plan and a cost baseline. Now here the cost is derived from the scope, schedule and resource. The project documents updated are activity attributes in terms of all these changes to be accepted, how the activity attributes are changing, what are the new assumptions if you are considering any, goes to the assumption log, and then the updated duration estimate after applying the duration activity or after applying the adjusted duration for a given activity. And then we have lessons learned register. You might share the knowledge which you think you have learned during these exercises. So how can you do it better? How can you make it more efficient? And so on and so forth. And then of course, as I told you, if there are any additional resource requirement, I might proactively give it to the resource manager to process it. It can be a couple of bench resources. It can be a couple of senior proficient skill resources as well. And then I might update the risk register for a resource, for a schedule or any changes thereof, so that my risk register is up to date with any risk I can foresee for a given project, time, schedule. Does that make sense? Anybody have any question on develop schedule processes? Any confusion here?
No.
Sir, can you explain schedule compression once again? I'm sorry, I was taking notes and I kind of missed it.
No problem, no problem. Schedule compression we're going to learn, we're going to do it practically as well. Okay, let's say you are making a tea, right? And you might get a help from your husband or your sister who is also woke up with you in the morning. So the tea making will be faster. Are you with me, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Because you got pot and water, your sister or a better half might put some tea and masala so that all these things are completed within a minute. Similarly, on some project, let's say we are doing that attendance management system enhancement. Now there's a team with Ravindra going to St. Louis office. There's a team going with Sarita at Chicago office, and they do complete this thing in parallel. And this is what we call schedule compression. So whenever you work in parallel with number of resources, the overall schedule of the project get compressed. We can complete the project within lesser or fewer days, fewer sprint. Are you with me, ma'am?
Got it, sir. Thank you.
So this is what we are talking about whenever we are discussing about schedule compression. And we'll try this thing because in practical life, we might need to compress schedule because of some delays, raw material receiving and all those things. We might have to compress schedule, and for that the resource manager might give us resources to compress our schedule in terms of the project should be on track, on budget every time. And that's what we try for, that's what we strive for as a project manager. That's why schedule compression is an important activity. We're going to do it a hands-on workshop also. Does that answer your query, ma'am?
Perfect, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, again, just to repeat in terms of how these, critical path method is, applied on a real level. When you start with a task A, B, C, D, there are 4 tasks here, right? And as we've seen in PDMs, there's an early start, there's a duration, early finish, late finish, total float, and late start. Okay, let's try to understand this thing. So when it comes to task A, well, it's good, it's common, but we have 2 separate tasks done by 2 different resources. B might be done by Ravindra, C might be done by Sarita. Now let's try to understand. When this task starts, we have an early start of 6 days, like 5 plus 1 is 6 days, right? Now this task B has to be completed in 5 days or 5 hours, whatever you want. Let's take it as, if hours is comfortable for you, you might take days. And for C, the task is of 10 days. Then the task D, where we have to have B or C completed before task D. So the early start for D is 16 days, because this is the larger one, 16. Here it can be 11 days, but still I have 5 days lead in these B task. In the C task, 5 days float in my B task, but there's no float in C task, because 10 plus 6 is 16, is that's what carry forward. So this will be my critical task, where I don't have any float. Float in the sense number of hours, number of days available for the parallel dependency of that task. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now please do try to implement this thing in a tea making process. Why I normally go by the tea making? Because it's the simplest one, right? If you have some help, well and good. And that's how we are going to try this thing for the 2 resources, you and your better half, or a friend or a sister or whatnot. So you are making a tea. So you put water to boil, and then if the other resource is ready with putting tea powder and masala, this can be completed in a minute. But that's the task. For that I'm just waiting. So for me, B task is almost at a with no what you can say number of hours or days. But C is as a critical task. I have to wait till we have these tea powder and the masalas putting into this tea making process. So that's a kind of critical task. If that's get delayed, my total project gets delayed. Similarly, and we need to we are going to devise this critical task in Microsoft project also, so that we can understand how this critical task works in a real planning way. But I believe you got a gist of it. What is a critical task, right? Any confusion at this moment? For anybody, if I can explain it again. Yeah, right? Let me move on. Now, relation between a product vision, release planning and iterative planning. Here, we are trying to understand on a holistic level how we plan the complete project, rather than a kind of a typical tea baking. Now we are going into the actual world, where there could be some 4 or 5 iterations, 4 or 5 sprint for, let's say, building our enhanced attendance system enhancement module. So there could be first release, and the release plan can be iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, where we might have been we might procure some sort of a biometric, we might develop some in-house software, and so on and so forth. Then we go and fix this biometric on the client's factory, client store, where the attendance management system might get automated after our testing and all those things. So these kind of iterative works we perform first for the St. Louis, then for the Chicago, then for the New York, and all those offices locations. We have to fit these attendance management system, deploy the software, test it, and then get it actually delivered to the client for their day-to-day use. Within one release, I might have few iterations, and within one iteration might have one feature like marking the attendance. The second feature might be checking with the attendance timing in terms of in time, out time, checking with the older records. The feature B can be checking with the older records how many leaves he or she might have, and so on and so forth. So like that, we might plan our task. So task A or completing feature A might take 5 hours, complete feature B might take 8 hours, and so on and so forth. So like that, we plan our Gantt chart in a progressive manner, in an iterative way. So my release might be my big milestone, My iteration complete or the sprint complete might be my another milestone. You can call it a smaller milestone, and then I have the tasks which are planned. So for one iteration, I might have these 5 tasks A, B, C, D, or I might have some more tasks or a less task depending on my project. We're going to do this practically. So please just try to understand how this bifurcation is happening at a planning level. And we normally have something like feature 1 development as a subtask, iteration 1 as a group task, and on top of that, release 1 can be another group task, which you can label it as a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 as well. And depending upon we working as a project manager, we do adopt to these thought processes of iterative planning in our typical project plan. Does that make sense, or am I confusing you? Anybody have any question at this time?
No, sir.
Yeah, right? No problem. Now, the next process group is control schedule. Okay, at the time, yes, we are at 8:30. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's review control schedule. Let's do control scheduling quick, and then we might close today's session, and then in our next session we might have a look at control schedule. So control schedule is basically trying to control our plan, trying to execute the plan as we planned, and that's what the controlling schedule is all about. The inputs are schedule management plan, schedule baseline, scope baseline, and performance measurement baseline. So schedule management plan is what we talk about, the Gantt chart. Schedule baseline is how you plan the task to be completed in terms of effectively completing the complete project. So how many tasks we are achieving in a given day, how much scope we are addressing in a given day, given sprint. These are the schedule baseline and the scope baseline. And then performance measurement baseline. In terms of human resource, raw material, or the system, we try to understand the performance. And we try to understand what are the major obstacles. And then the project documents updates are lessons learned register, the knowledge management which are archived from the similar projects earlier, the project calendars, if there are any leaves, holidays, whatever we plan, project schedule in terms of whatever we schedule for today, have we completed yesterday, what have we planned for tomorrow, and so on and so forth. Then we have a schedule data. This talks about the total tasks are in creation, enhancement, or completion as of that time, and this schedule data in terms of whatever releases are being planned. Are we on dot? Are we behind or ahead? Depending upon that task, we might retrieve some help, or we might add some resources if that can help us. And that's what the schedule data is all about. Then we have a work performance data where we are trying to understand how to improve our efficiency, how to perform better, how to progress better. Is the crashing one way to go about it? Or should we try to increase our resources and try to address this thing, or should we wait in terms of schedule to get a quality output? Sometimes the resource addition might not help because the skill level and proficiency level might not be there in other resources. For that, we might have to prolong the schedule, and that's the only option sometimes. And that's why the performance data is measured almost every time. Whenever you develop something, whenever you enhance something, the performance data is measured. So that at an organizational level, we're trying to compare the efficiencies. And then organizational process assets to help us out in understanding how we are doing, what are the standardization we can use, what type of documents you just need to add 4 or 5 entity, and then document is ready for release, and something like that. So all these organizational standardization, organizational other teams help us to get better control on our schedule, better control on our plan. Now also controlling schedule includes measurement. The management says whatever you can't measure, you can't control. The normal example given on the management class are your anger. So if you can't measure your anger, you can't control it. Could you understand what I'm trying to say here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there we are trying to understand what type of progress we are making, right? So for that, we have certain type of measurement we use. These measurements are normally mentioned in the data analysis, earned value analysis. So whatever you deliver to the client, that much what we earn, right? And that's how we measured earned value analysis. We have a hands-on workshop on earned value analysis also. And earned value analysis is one of the most frequent questions asked during the interview. So we need to really build a script for that answer. What is earned value management? And we'll see to that in our next session. But just review it. Iteration burn down chart. How much you have completed in terms of work with whatever iterations have you completed. So is it like out of 10, you have completed 3 iterations, but the work is not all completed. So there's some pending items. There are some delays and like that. So this is what we call iteration burn down chart. How much burn down in terms of efforts and how much was the output of that burn down. So something like that. And then performance reviews. These are specifically for performance of a human resource, performance of a raw material, and performance of the systems or machine usages as well. So we try to understand, are we working at our optimum performance level? Could we improve it? And so on and so forth. So regarding human, raw material, and machines, we normally try to understand how we can improve performance. Then there's a trend analysis. We try to collect the data of whatever we have done till date. We try to extrapolate. You can do it in Excel. There are a good number of tools available like business intelligence and all, where you can have this trend analysis, or what you can say extrapolation analysis, analyze for whatever you did today. If you keep doing similar way, how the things will be. Do I need any help in that? If yes, please check with PMO, resource management, and all the other things. Then we have variance analysis. Whatever we planned, are we deviating from that? If yes, then yes, we need to change out why we are deviating. Is there any problem in performance? Is there any problem in quality of or proficiency of skills of a resource, and so on and so forth. So it's a kind of sprint review mechanism which is inbuilt in our best practices. So variance analysis is basically a retrospective analysis. Then we have a what if scenario. So this is what we call alternative analysis, where if you go this way, it just will it be efficient, will it not? If we go it that way, will that be less costly, more economical, and all those things. Then we have critical path method, which we have seen in our last slide. The PMIs, where the data is being retrieved automatically from your project management plan and shown it to the top management. And the resource optimization. Normally in real practical life, you don't get the resources which we are looking for. So for that, whatever you got, you work with the optimum efficiency. And that's what this resource optimization is all about. And of course, we have studied the lead and lags in terms of the critical path method also. So we'll concentrate ourselves as a project manager on all the critical path, so that that path must not get delayed, must not get diverted. And that's how we basically keep our project on track every time, everywhere. And then in case, by God forbid, if we are delayed by a day or two, we might do a kind of schedule compression. So we might request some extra resources from the resource management team for a few days and get the project on track. And then the outputs are work performance information. We do track the efficiencies, the output, the release planning, the milestone comparison. And if these are, as per we plan, well and good. If not, then we might consider in terms of adding few resources, changing our raw material, or improving our system to make sure we are on track before our project ends. And we do study trend analysis to basically have a schedule forecast. Like, when are we expected to complete this project in case we keep going at this speed, and so on and so forth. Then the change request. How do we accept change request? Do we have sufficient resource and schedule to accept change requests? If not right now, then when, and so on and so forth. The project management plan updates are schedule management plan, schedule baseline, cost baseline, and performance measurement baseline. Cost baseline because we have a evolved cost or a calculated cost whenever we have a scope, schedule, and a resource. So that cost is basically analyzed in terms of how we are performing. Do we have any profit margins, or are we utilizing our budgeted figures, and so on and so forth. We're going to study this in depth in our next knowledge area called project cost management knowledge area. Then we have project documents to be updated are assumption log for any additional assumptions, basis of estimates, are we complying to the same estimation thought process which we have accepted, and the lessons learned, whatever we learn in terms of similar projects we did earlier, or if you have done anything better than the earlier versions, please do share with the organizational best practices. Then the project schedule also get updated as per any change in terms of performance, in terms of the next level, adversal of some challenges. Same thing with the resource calendar. If any shortcomings of resources, if I add any new resources, the resource calendars will change, and I'll apply those calendars to my project Gantt chart as well. Any risk which we have identified might get added to the risk register, and we do update the schedule data as well, like what type of milestone are we completing tomorrow, next sprint, and so on and so forth. So all these detail gets updated in terms of how you can control the schedule in the best possible way. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions?
No, sir.
Right, so let's stop here. In terms, we'll start with actually building our Gantt chart in a Microsoft Excel from our next session. Please do not miss. Most probably on Thursday, Prerna ma'am will continue on her activity Agile Scrum guidance. We'll meet on next Tuesday. Next Monday. Okay, and then we'll basically learn these, how we can build the Gantt chart in an Excel and how to control these schedules with that Gantt chart. So please don't miss a next session. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your timing. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Please share the
Thank
video and the slides, please.
Yes, sure. I'll share these things. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.